Not really good or bad, just interesting. This I love. I geek out on this sort of stuff. Like one of your grandmother's old thick stockings wrapped around an old coat hanger.
Mate, is there any point in me even being in this video?
What do you mean?
Well, mechanically, there's virtually nothing to talk about.
There's got to be something, surely.
I guess if I don't talk about anything, I probably won't get paid though, right?
That I don't know. I'll have to ask Sam. I'm not sure.
I could talk about how boring they are.
No, I've got that bit covered. That's sorted.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I guess there are a couple of things I could talk about.
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Are you after a car in arguably the most boring and oversaturated segment of the entire car market? Well, the Lexus UX could be the car for you. But while you'd like to think that, thanks to the UX being one of the most affordable ways to get behind the wheel of a new Lexus, and with Lexus being renowned for their build quality and reliability, a used example should still be a sensible decision, right? Well, unfortunately, it's just not as simple as that. For example, like many modern cars, there are plenty of complaints that the paint can scratch and mark way too easily. On these, especially on the darker hues. Now, if these scratches get back to the bare metal, that's going to be very expensive to fix. But you know what? That's actually about it for common problems with these exteriors. Compared to many of its rivals that can be guilty of a host of exterior gremlins, these tend to avoid them. Smallish premium SUVs like the Audi Q3, the Volvo XC30, the Range Rover Evoque, the Mercedes-Benz GLA, the BMW X1, they can all be guilty of a range of exterior problems, fit and finish discrepancies, water leakage issues. Even in some cases, the badges can come loose and fall off. However, one frustrating area that the UX does share with plenty of its competition is just trying to work out which one is going to suit your lifestyle best, because trying to decipher what's on offer here can be a bit of a nightmare. Let's help you understand it. From 2019 to 2023, you had 2 models with 2 power plants in 3 trim specs, and these could be optioned with a couple of enhancement packs. We'll explain all of the details of these when we get inside, because in 2023 there was a mid-cycle update and it enhanced a lot of these things. Also in 2023, an EV variant joined the range, but it was only available in 2 trim specs. Then in 2024, Lexus discontinued the petrol models and the hybrid UX 250H, replacing it with the UX 300H, which comes with more power and better fuel economy. And then in 2025, the EV model was discontinued, which leaves us with what we have now, purely the UX 300H in 3 trim specs and the option of a couple of enhancement packs, which is kind of what the range should have been from the start. But what should you be paying for a used UX here in Australia these days? At the very most, prices top out at around about $85,000. At the other end of the spectrum, around about 25 grand. But this brings up an interesting point, because beneath the Lexus's styling and interior, the UX actually shares its platform and running gear with the Toyota Corolla Cross. And with demand for the Corolla SUV soaring, even the cheapest used examples started around about $30,000. And that's typically for a base spec GX with plenty of Ks on it. But for the same sort of money, you could get something like this, an early base spec UX 200. And this thing's going to top the Corolla Cross in terms of a premium feel and badge appeal. But then step up to $40,000 and you're looking at a 2022 Corolla Cross GXL all-wheel drive hybrid, or for the same sort of money, a 2019 UX 250H F Sport, which has the same mechanicals, just far more luxury and flair. And I mean, like, nothing against the Corolla Cross at all, but just look at this. Like, this is surely more appealing than the Toyota, right? Although overall, I think the design is quite handsome, there are some interesting design points, some good, some not so good. For example, fake vents, bad. Sharp body lines, really good. Then the wheel arch design that doesn't seem to match front to back, not really good or bad, just interesting. However, we think that Lexus agree that the overall design might not be achieving its ultimate potential, because they commissioned a couple of design studies. We just call them how it should have looked in the first place from new, because it looks like this and this. And look, yeah, I know, those pictures aroused me just as much as they did for you. But when you really break those images down, basically it's a UX featuring some aftermarket wheels, some cool tires, maybe a lift kit or a lowering kit or some bar work and some aftermarket lights. All of that stuff is totally achievable if you buy a UX. Or if you want to make your current car look something like those pictures, all you've got to do is type in your rego details into the Automotive Superstore site, the link's down below, and that site will show you all the parts that will fit your car perfectly. There's over 400,000 of them, so surely however you want your car to look or perform or just do, they'll be able to help you out. So the exterior is pretty much trouble-free, but unfortunately with the interior, there are a few little issues that we need to discuss. Now, look, generally with the Lexus models we've shot previously, owners compliment just how resilient these interiors are. But unfortunately with the UX, plenty of owners have complained that some of the interior plastics can scratch really easily. Now, this might depend on how the UX you're looking at is spec'd. With this one, there's not a whole lot of gloss plastic in these high traffic areas, but plenty of models on the used market, all of this is gloss black plastic, and as usual, it scratches easily and it looks shit after about 40 seconds of ownership. And also, typical for Toyota or Lexus in this case, the infotainment systems, they can suck. And look, not in a way that they have any major issues at all. In fact, compared to plenty or all of the other cars in this market, these don't seem to have any problems with Bluetooth dropping out or Apple CarPlay or Android Auto dropping out. Actually, just on that, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto was added from 2019 and wirelessly from the 2022 update. But just using this infotainment system with the trackpad kind of setup has infuriated so many owners out there. And the entire system, especially in the pre-update cars, it is just feeling pretty old. It's slow, the graphics look a generation old. It is a bit disappointing. However, if you are left-handed in a right-hand drive car like me, or the opposite, you do get used to it maybe quicker than others, but even then it feels like the sensitivity is turned up to about 11 or 12, so the slightest movement sends the little cursor thing flying all over the screen, and it's a nightmare to use on bumpy roads. Now, that 2022 update, it also increased the size of the screen. It's a whole new interface as well, so it feels much faster and much more modern. It is a huge improvement. And also the voice command on the 2022 models and newer is really, really good. But even then, it still cannot match the likes of Audi's MMI system or BMW's iDrive. Although, if you find a model like this that is fitted with the Mark Levinson sound system, this thing blows pretty much all of the competition out of the water when it comes to sound quality. Now, there are some other issues with the interior, but we'll get into those more when we get into the back. But besides the shitty infotainment system and the plastics that mark too easily, that's about it for common complaints and concerns inside. And again, it's like the exterior of this car compared to so much of the competition that we've already covered and reviewed that can just be guilty of all sorts of problems. Yeah, these don't seem to suffer from them. And sticking to the positive aspects of this interior, let's talk the design. Personally, I love this. There is a lot going on. There's plenty of levels and different textures and colors of, or let's say shades of black and slight brown. But I like it. It kind of looks like complex origami, and somehow it works. In the pictures, it might look a bit too much, but yeah, sitting here works really, really nicely. Although, in terms of the materials used, like, it all feels really nice, but you can kind of get the sense that it's maybe one of the cheapest Lexus you can buy. It sort of feels like a fancy Toyota and not like a premium Lexus, if you know what I mean. It's nice, just maybe not as flash as you'd expect. And this is a sports luxury, so this is one of the top of the range models. It's fine. But ergonomics, absolutely spot on. I don't know how Lexus do this with their seats. They are the best seats in the market. These things are just the right amount of supportive, but they are so comfortable. A mate of mine, Andrew, owns one of these. It's his work car, and he does so many kilometers in it, and he complimented just how great the seats are. Never gets a numb bum or like a sore lower back. Spot on. And the overall ergonomics in terms of just using everything, perfect. Obviously, aside from this shit show, but you'll get used to it. And look, while the design or the materials used, visually might not scream ultra premium, just the way everything works and the fit and finish and the build quality does, the indicator stalks and all of these buttons here, like it feels so nice to use. And just the sense of quality, the way everything matches up, the way the leather works with the fabrics and the way all this kind of trim comes together, and just like everything feels so solid. Like there's like no squeaks. We filmed a BMW X5 the other day worth 3-4 times what this is. Look at this. The doors don't squeak at all. BMW, Mercedes, Audi, why do your doors squeak and these don't? And then as far as space for your bits and bobs, good. Sort of. So glove box is an okay size, that's fine. Wireless charging pad there. No reports that this overheats your phone and kills it, which is really good. This I love. I geek out on this sort of stuff. So under here you've got your little power outlet, right? Now in so many cars they would cut costs and they'd have the power outlet and down in some kind of crevice within sort of a cubby hole, and it just gathers dust and looks disgusting and filthy. In this, they've put it in this little trapdoor, which also, the way it raises and the feeling of tension when you close it, it feels premium. I love that. Attention to detail. Some owners have complained about the position of the cup holders. I don't know, I think they're okay. I get that they're sort of here, so if you've got your phone, you're trying to access it and you've got like a drink there, that can be a bit of a faff, but they're the perfect size to hold a small pretentious coffee, like what I had a double ristretto with a dash of oat milk this morning. Beautiful. It has the classic Lexus bisexual opening console here because it goes both ways. Fantastic. Good amount of room in there as well. And it's also felt line down the bottom so things won't rattle around. USB ports, auxiliary input there. Door bins, they're an okay size, but they are scratchy plastic so things will rattle around. This is designed specifically to collect dust, but again, attention to detail from Lexus. They've added some felt down the bottom so the dust just gets sucked into the felt so it doesn't look too filthy. No sunglasses holder up here. There's nothing under here. There's no storage under the seats. It's funny, it's okay for practicality, but the bits of practicality that they do have are really well designed. Now with a bunch of different models, not to mention the enhancement packs that are available over different iterations of the car, chances are each UX is going to feature different levels of features and equipment. But it's pretty safe to say that even the early base models of these are going to feature more tech and equipment and features than their equivalent rivals from other manufacturers. So you got to remember, this car was being targeted to a younger market, but Lexus don't have the same sort of brand appeal that, say Mercedes-Benz or Audi or BMW do to that demographic. So to try to offset that, they just loaded these things with kit to try to get customers to come across. And that especially goes for any of the post-update cars. And then find a more recent F Sport that has an enhancement pack fitted, or a car like this, a sports luxury. Surely these things have every bell and whistle that you'd ever desire. And the same can be said for the safety features. These are way up there with the best in class in terms of trying to keep you alive and healthy. However, when it does come to replacing, I think, one of the most critical safety features you can on a car, don't get trapped into spending way too much money with the OEMs for buying their wiper blades or risk buying crap aftermarket ones. Do what we do and get yourself a set of WiperTech wiper blades. There's a link down below. It's going to get you 15% off and free express shipping. They're so easy to order online. They fit perfectly and you can do it yourself. They're bloody legends. Also, great Aussie company and they're mates of ours. Go support them. Get yourself a set. The link's down there. Do it. Although, if you reach out to me via the email link down below or on the socials and offer your car for us to feature, and we feature it, we're going to give you a set of WiperTech blades for free as a thank you present. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 17 centimeters taller than Florida Atlantic University wide receiver Le Carpatron Duke Marriott. This is in my driving position, and I completely agree with plenty of the owners that it's pretty cramped back here. My feet, granted I'm wearing my big shoes today, so my feet have not a lot of space. My knees are smashed up against the backs of the seats here, so I've got to do the whole, OnlyFans style leg spread to get in. The seats feel a bit too upright, and I can't get them to recline back at all. The windows aren't that large. It's nice in here that everything's a light color, so it doesn't feel too claustrophobic, but I would imagine if all of this was dark, with how small I feel in here, this would feel quite claustrophobic. It almost makes me feel like I need to curl up into the fetal position. That's what this back seat area does. The seats themselves are really comfy and the leather feels ultra premium. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be back here for too long. As far as features and practicality, you've got air vents, you've got power outlets, you've got Uno map pocket there. You've got, thank God, no door bins, because there's no way you'd get to them. This is going to collect bits of filth. Interesting too that in the front they're felt lined, but in here, plastic only. You've got a pull down armrest here with a couple more cup holders. Isofix points. Think that's it for features and practicality back here. I don't want to be back here anymore, it's not that comfortable. But then we come to another complaint, and it's just regarding the size of this boot. In fact, this has the smallest boot in its class, actually by a fair margin. In fact, this boot is smaller than plenty of hatchbacks on the market. The seats do fold flat, which is good, but then the opening aperture isn't all that large. Plus the all-wheel drive versions have even less boot space than this. In the front-wheel drive, you have a bit of a load lip and there's a little bit more space, but everyone on the forums and owners groups tells you about how small this boot is, but you don't really realize it until you actually see it in person. But there's a much bigger gripe about the boot rather than the practicality, and it's this. It is this. This is the rubbish excuse for, okay, it's not a parcel shelf, because that would give you the indication that it has some point of use. This is basically, imagine like one of your grandmother's old thick stockings wrapped around an old coat hanger. That's what it is. Now also, we understand that in Japan they're probably quite adept at origami, but here in Australia not, because what you have to do is try to fit this thing into this bag, and there are visual instructions. Sam and I, Sam's the guy holding the camera, we have quite a lot of experience of these sorts of things, like big diffusers for, photo shoots and video shoots. But with this, we've both been trying now for far too long, and we cannot get this stupid thing to fold in the right way. There are instructions, and there's an image on the bag of somebody that is having the reaction that Sam and I have both had so far, which is just basically this. I'm out. Here we go. I know we've been at it for, like, seriously probably 5 minutes. There's got to be a way. Come on. How do they get the design of the power outlet and the dashboard so incredibly right? That's brilliant design. And then they make this shit show of a thing. Why couldn't they just copy Honda and have a little pull out? Like, I get that you don't want like a solid shelf, but just do the Honda thing and have a pull out curtain. That makes more sense. This, nightmare. Now, before we get into talking about what these are like to drive, and yes, that does mean talking about some complaints, we need your help with something. See, it turns out that of everybody that watches our videos regularly, about 75% of you don't subscribe to ReDriven. But if you just give that subscribe button just a little bit of a jab, it allows us to make more free content for you. So hopefully that's a good thing. Let's get that number down, people. Also, if you're feeling extra generous, we're running a membership program, the link for which is down below. And some of the perks for that is that you get to find out what cars we're filming before we publish the video. And we'll do our best to answer your questions in the video about that car. For example, Jaden BJB R2H wanted to know about the run flats. This is a common complaint with these. The run flats are basically terrible. They seem to amplify the road noise. They're not that comfortable. Even handling wise, they're not sketchy, but not that great. Plenty of owners highly recommend ditching the run flats and fitting a set of premium tires because it can transform the car for the better. Now, Jaden also wanted to know about the steering being on the heavy side. I don't think it's that heavy. It definitely gives the car a bit more of a premium feel compared to the Corolla Cross that it's based on, but it's not heavy to a point where you're not going to be able to live with it regularly. He also wanted to know if the CVT sort of cheapens the feel of the car and if it would be better with a traditional torque converter. Yeah, look, CVTs aren't my favorite gearbox out there. This is easily one of the better ones. I don't think it cheapens the car. I just think it's one of those things that you have to kind of get used to the vibe of it, because it doesn't feel anything like a traditional auto. Rather than going through gears and the revs rising and falling, it sort of holds the rev line, and then the gearbox, the CVT, it changes to give the car more propulsion forward. And it doesn't feel that sort of driver-centric. It's not cheap and nasty, it's just not what I'd be into, but I get why they've used a CVT. It's more fuel efficient, and it's just Toyota's thing with these. And then Alf Stewart 22 wanted to know what percentage of the car is Toyota Corolla Cross and what percentage is Lexus. Look, we haven't had a chance to completely dismantle this car to work out what's what. However, basically anything that you can see or sense is Lexus. So the feeling through the seat of your pants, the bodywork, the interior, pretty much everything else that's structural or engineered is Toyota Corolla Cross. But you've got to remember, all of this has been calibrated to feel like a Lexus, and it doesn't feel like a fancy Corolla Cross. It feels like a Lexus UX. But back to the complaints about the car from the owners. First one is maybe the fuel efficiency isn't quite what you'd hope for. A lot of hybrid owners are seeing around about 6 litres per 100 Ks. This isn't a hybrid, and I'm seeing about 7 litres per 100 Ks, which is not too bad. But the big complaint is that the fuel tank is way too small, especially for the hybrid. You buy a hybrid thinking you're not going to be visiting the fuel station all that often, but when the fuel tank's only slightly larger than a carton of milk, you end up going to the servo all the time. And you know what? That's kind of it for common complaints. It's all good news from here. First of all, the ride quality is exceptional. I actually found this on a Lexus RX I drove recently, and this is the same. No matter how big the pothole or how rough the road, it just soaks it up so well, but not at the cost of sort of handling. It still feels really secure on road. You feel safe all the time. It just feels planted to the road, but just just in such a comfortable way. And then we come to the power plants. This isn't a hybrid, and this is fine. It's got an appropriate amount of power. With the hybrids, so good. I've driven the hybrid version of this, and like all Lexus and Toyota, it is a seamless transition between the engine working and the electric power. They pretty much wrote the book on this, so obviously it's going to be right. And again, it's an appropriate amount of power. You're not going to be wanting for more to overtake or to pull into traffic or to merge on the freeway, any of that. Not a performance car, but it doesn't need to be. It just does the job so well. But look, overall, it's just so bloody pleasant in the way it does everything. But maybe at the cost of some charm and charisma. It does feel a little bit boring, but you got to remember, I am a wanker who gets off on little nuances of cars having character. They're probably faults, actually. This thing, in terms of driving, just doesn't have any faults. Kind of wish it did. Actually, maybe it does, because we haven't discussed mechanically what goes on here, what can go wrong, and hybrid systems, what's the go there? I can't elaborate on this because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who he is? It's Jim Berliner.
Look, these are close to being one of the most reliable cars you can buy. Although there are a couple of little issues. The M20 platform uses a electric water pump. It's got plastic internals. There have been reports of that getting stuck and cars overheating, extremely uncommon. The more common problem with the water pump is it just leaks, like a whole bunch of other cars have leaking water pumps. Again, not hugely common, but they have been known to start leaking at about 80,000 kilometers, so something to keep in mind. Another problem you might see on one of these is the EGR valve. Sometimes it gets stuck shut, sometimes it gets stuck open, sometimes it logs a fault code, sometimes it doesn't. If it gets stuck open, the car typically runs terribly. Not a hugely common problem, and also not super expensive to fix either. The hybrid systems, yeah, look, typical Toyota reliability. At this age, you're extremely unlikely to see any problems at all. One thing I will say is just make sure that the filter or the vent for the battery cooling fan isn't clogged up, because if it is, the battery can overheat and that can cause problems. The transmissions, the eCVT in these, it's proven to be one of the most reliable CVTs actually you can get. If well serviced, you can expect years of trouble-free motoring. Now, speaking of servicing, I've actually got a bone to pick with Toyota here, and it's not just Toyota, it's a lot of manufacturers these days. They've spec'd 016 oil. That oil is too thin for a hot climate if you want the engine to last. It's actually totally okay, if you read the fine print, to put 5W30 in it, which is much better for a hot climate, especially in Australia. And the other issue I've got is Toyota are now stretching out their service intervals to 15,000 Ks. Again, if you want it to last a really long time, use better oil and do it every 10,000 Ks, and then you can expect years of trouble-free motoring.
Something else to keep in mind as well is that Lexus have easily one of the highest customer retention rates of any brand in the industry. Also, we came across countless comments from owners stating that compared to the various Volkswagens and Audis and BMWs and Mercedes that they'd owned previously, the UX easily beat them in terms of build quality and just the overall ownership experience. Plus, thanks to the UX sharing pretty much all of its components with various Toyota models, parts and maintenance is generally more affordable too. So should you buy one? Well, look, yeah, as long as it passes a pre-purchase inspection or it's a Lexus certified used car exactly like this one, and you don't require heaps of cargo space, yeah, absolutely, you should buy one. But if you do require way more cargo space in the back, maybe it's one of these instead.
Mate, there's really no point in me... Sorry, I was looking at the camera. That's weird. Mate, is there any point in me even being in this video?
Because nothing else.
But let's start... Wow, sorry. Words. But let's... What the f*** can't I talk? But let's start...